We're going to talk about Imperfekt Verben, which is a form of past tense. This form is used more in writing, and usually these verbs are one word. So instead of saying haben gesagt, you say sagte. So now we're going to explain the rules. There are multiple forms of imperfect, but right now we're going to talk about regular weak verbs. Okay, first we're going to talk about regular weak verbs. To find the regular weak verbs, you take the stem and add eta or ta. And so the rules for adding the stem is that if the stem ends in D or T, you add eta, or if the stem ends in M and N, M or N preceded by a consonant, you add eta. Anything else, you just add ta. So we have some examples for arbeiten. The stem is arbeit, which ends in a T. So you add eta, and it becomes arbeitete. Our next example is sagen. The stem is sag, which ends in a G. It doesn't fall under any of these criteria, so you just add ta, and you get sagte. And our last example is öffnen. So the stem is öffnen, and this ends in an N preceded by a consonant, the F, so you add eta, and it becomes öffnete.
Regular weak verbs also follow the pattern of stem plus eta or ta, except the stem is different than what it is in the infinitive. So, for example, wissen becomes wusste, haben becomes hatte, kennen, kannte, denken, dachte, except there isn't really a pattern to this, so you'll have to memorize some of the more common ones as seen here. Like weak verbs, strong verbs don't follow the pattern of stem plus eta or ta, so you have to memorize what the strong verbs are and what they become in the imperfect. So we have three common examples here. Sehen becomes sah, essen becomes aß, and gehen becomes ging.
Okay, the Modalverben also have an imperfect form that you need to know. For most of them, you can take the stem and take the umlaut out and add a t at the end, except for mögen changes to möchte.
So a couple other infinitive to imperfect forms to remember are for sein and werden, and sein becomes war, and then werden becomes wurden, which means would have.
How to conjugate these imperfect verben. For the most part, they're similar to the conjugations in present tense, except the RZS is a little different. So here's a weak verb example. Ich sagte, du sagtest, RZS sagte, wir sagten, ihr sagtet, und sie sagten. And here is war. Ich war, du warst, RZS war, wir waren, ihr wartet, und sie waren.
So now we have a few examples so that you can see what the imperfect past looks like when it's actually put into a sentence. So our first example here is Ich will Kristen helfen, and you can see that the main verb of the sentence here is wollen, which is will right here, and so wollen becomes wollte in the imperfect past, and so the sentence will end up becoming Ich wollte Kristen helfen. And as you can see, the verb still remains in the second position, and the order of the rest of the sentence doesn't change. In fact, nothing about the sentence order or the order of the parts in the sentence change. It's just that the verb ends up changing. Now the second example is Swathi bringt ein Laptop mit, and bringen is an irregular weak verb, and so it becomes Swathi brachte ein Laptop mit. And now the third example is just a regular weak verb, and so you can just use stem plus t in order to change the verb. So it will be wir spielten mit dem Kind. And it's spielten and it ends with the N because wir is the subject of the sentence. Now, the fourth example is with gehen, and gehen is a strong verb, and so you have to memorize what it changes from. And so it will end up being du gingst, because ging is what it ends up changing to, and then you just add the ending for du, so st, so it becomes du gingst zur Schule. And the final example is a werden example, and the sentence is über Nacht wurde das Wetter dann schlechter. And so das Wetter is the subject of the sentence, so it is going to have the ending for er, sie, and s. And so it is über Nacht wurde das Wetter dann schlechter. And you can see the verb is still in the second position because über Nacht acts as the first position even though the subject comes after it.